Hello again, Neil Petrie with Free and Equal, back with Nigel Furness in Brighton, and today we're talking about his experience in the Conservative Party after his time with the Communists, of course, and we'll be talking some interesting incidents during that time, some years ago now, but still very relevant to what goes on today. So I'll turn now for Nigel. Hi Nigel. Yeah, last time we did discuss, your interest in Mrs. Thatcher when you'd seen her on the television and you decided you'd move more in that direction. You'd seen the issues with communism and the boat people coming out of Vietnam, etc. So once you went into the Conservative Party, was it Hove Conservatives you joined first?
Hove Conservative Association.
Right, yeah, if you could just talk us through that, how did that work out?
Well, I didn't. I mean, it wasn't a sudden transformation as time went by, because to begin with, Mrs. Thatcher was absolutely abysmal as the opposition leader, so it didn't really particularly attract me. But I was moving in direction of realising there's only one way really that to get on, and that's by employing yourself. Added to the fact I'd already been blacklisted by the Department of Employment. They would do nothing to help me find a job or help me in any way either, because of my former past as a thoroughly radical trade unionist and what happened with Ted Heath, etc. So I was already moving in that direction, and I was employing myself as a self-employed person, gardening. I had a van, I did removals, I did rubbish clearing, I did house clearances, you name it, I did it. Anything to earn a living.
What are Thatcher's entrepreneurs before they were Thatcher entrepreneurs?
Without even realising it. Good point, Neil, good point. But anyway, then things really started to improve, and my girlfriend at the, well, not at the moment, she was at that time, she worked for my mum. She'll remain nameless. Anyway, I can remember we were sat down on the couch in the staff room while I ran a restaurant, and she looked at me and I looked at her when we heard Norman Tebbit come on. It was a Tory party conference. It would have been about 1977, I think. And we just, it's one of those things, we just both turned and looked at one another and both said the same thing. He's convinced me. And, well, Jackie then went and became a member of Brighton Conservatives. Meanwhile, I didn't join Hove Conservatives until 1979. It was early in 1979, because it's quite obvious that an election had to come soon. And I joined Hove Conservatives, and yes, I gave them the money, but I was completely honest with them too. I said I'd been a former communist trade unionist. Yes, well, I saw one eyebrow raise of the now late Conservative agent for Hove. I thought, well, that's gone down like a lead balloon. So I didn't hear any more. And I kept, getting in touch with them. They never got back. Of course, Miss Thatcher won the election in 1979. But I stayed a member, and I gave considerably in excess of what was required, the bare minimum to be a member. And it wasn't until 1984 and the Grand Hotel bombing, because by that time I bought a house and I was well on my way to getting set up in property, employing people as well as myself by that time. And anyway, in 1984, when that bomb went off, and amazingly I slept through it, even though it's only half a mile away, I completely slept through it. And I thought, right, that is it. And my insurance broker at the time, he was a vice president of the Hove Conservatives. and he said, right, Nigel, come around with me. We need you in the party. And he laid the law down and told the agent exactly what his role was. A paid employee, it's not up to you to decide who we do and who we don't have as members. So, very impressive. Well, once I joined, I mean, I flew through the ranks. And I wasn't
So
really...
they didn't accept you as a member? They hadn't accepted you as a member at all?
Oh, yes.
You were just paying them dues, as it were, separate to being a member?
Oh, yes.
Because of your dark past?
Well, they didn't even inform me of annual general meetings of the association or anything. I was up to my eyes busy with more than one business by that time. It all happened very quickly. But, they were happy to take the money. Of course they were happy to grab the money. Nothing's changed there, but do nothing with the membership. However, I was told that I quote, told by the agent, the late Jerry Exley, that frankly, I was much too political for Hove.
Too political for politics?
Too political for Hove. Oh, you'd be far better off in Brighton. Like Alan Clark. We had an Alan Clark, said Jerry. But he went to Brighton. Now he's an MP up in, somewhere up in...
Was he the writer?
No.
Not the diary Alan Clark.
No, there were three Alan Clarks.
I didn't remember him.
Oh, no, not him.
Yeah.
3 Alan Clark MPs were Tories. Right. And he's up somewhere in Greater Geordieland, said the Colonel, very dismissive.
Banished to the north.
Banished to the north.
See if you can survive up there.
Yes, well, I said, I'm born and bred here, I said, and I don't intend to go anywhere else. You'd be much better off in Brighton, you know. Anyway, cut a long story short, then the now late John Capper became a great friend of mine. He was chair of the CPC. Now that stood for two things. The CPC, at constituency level, that was the central policy, the constituency, I always get myself mixed up in this, the Constituency Political Committee. But it then went up the ranks through the regions. If you were on the CPC, you could put yourself up for election to, in my case, Southeast area. And of course, I very quickly did. Well, I became deputy chair, acting chair. It's a bit like Derek Hatton in the militant days in Liverpool, because John Capp had a boat. Fascinating aside, the boat was requisitioned by the British Army right at the end of the Second World War, when Germany had been occupied. Locals were telling the British soldiers, Hermann Goering's got a boat under that haystack. Pull the other leg, it's got bells on it, was the attitude of the British troops. And they went and got their pitchforks and tossed it. And sure enough, a 65-foot ocean-going yacht, battened down hatch, fully paper crossing the Atlantic. They were still hunting for Goering at the time. Well, this is a story I was told. You might know better about that. And it was requisitioned. And ironically, it then was bought by a trust of which John Capp was a considerable shareholder in which. And it was for rehabilitating ex-alcoholics and ex-junkies, etc., which always rather amused me.
You could tell it was weaving its way out of the port.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah, but the thought that perhaps the malevolent spirit of Hermann Goering might put in an appearance. Well, anyway, so John Capp was very busy with that and a whole host of other interests. And anyway, I was deputy chair, so I was effectively running the CPC. And there were a number of incidents where, of course, the executive council of the association was outraged by what the CPC were doing, because I was press officer. I've been press officer many times in many different things. And simply for putting just small congratulatory statements in the local rag, the Argus, congratulating Norman Tebbit or congratulating Margaret Thatcher. Now here's the curious thing. Hove Conservative Association was infested with dripping wets. Well, that's what Norman Tebbit called them anyway, and he was right.
This was the antipathy towards those announcements. Nothing.
Gosh, yeah. And of course, so much of the old school time misogyny, what would a woman know about running politics? I shall not name the person that said women should be confined to the bedroom, the kitchen and the bedroom. Yes, that was a council.
Well, it shows you, doesn't it, how revolutionary Margaret Thatcher and the Conservative Party was. You know, in reality, that even the members were talking like this still. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Those were different times, the 70s. But that shows they were very, behind the curve. But it shows what she did do. She broke that mold. You know, she broke that mold.
Oh, she broke the mold totally.
Yeah. For all the issues that there are, that was something that women were fortunate to have her as the cheerleader and pushing on.
Well, the fact of the matter is, it very soon became apparent to me there was an added reason to why I joined the Thatcherite Conservatives. It wasn't just because I was believing in entrepreneurship, but they were actually revolutionary compared to the other three parties. All we had then was the Liberals, Labour and the Tories, all saying the same old thing. Exactly like today, it just mirrors it. Who were the radicals? Who were the revolutionaries? The Thatcherites. No wonder so many left-wing people came over to the Tories. They were joining in droves.
Is that what you saw? You saw
absolutely, and I encourage a lot of people in my own family, a lot of friends, a lot of my workers. Yes, people I was employing were actually joining the local Hove Conservative Association. There was absolute horror. We don't need the people of that calibre in this party. I said, well, I think it's about time that you got in touch with reality. That is true conservatism. That's what should have been the case all along. And for all I know, probably...
Starting again, Nigel, after being so rudely interrupted outside with the scum clearer device. Seemed to work on the pond anyway.
Perhaps they should put it to work on the rest of Tip City.
That's right. So in terms of looking at where we finished off, we were talking about the Thatcherite revolution, really. Yeah. And the change in the Conservative Party and the people who were joining it. Yeah. So if we carry on from there, really, and your memory of those times in Hove Conservatives.
Well, to be honest with you, I suppose what I was doing was attempting to take the local branch in a different direction and make it more appealing, more attractive to ordinary working people. Because, to be honest with you, and I mean no disrespect, I mean I'm an old man now, but I was a man in my 30s then, and I just felt like every door was slammed in my face. Oh, we don't want young people. This is our little fiefdom. And I thought, well, they're not going to last for, live forever. And I know, because suddenly I'm 74, I'm not going to live forever. I try and encourage younger generations, but everything was completely wrong from top to toe in that association. And really and truly, myself and my colleagues whom I got, I had a very high recruitment rate. I always said in the communists, I was able to recruit people because I will take hours, I will give hours, I'll spend hours talking and listening as well as talking to people and trying to find out, what it is they want of whatever political party. But no, this is our private fiefdom and everything. There was no positions for anybody. I wasn't a greasy pole climber, but I wanted to be much more deeply involved. Not with the intent of climbing a greasy pole and getting into the House of Commons. Yes, my ultimate aim was to represent Hove in the House of Commons, not to be parachuted in anywhere else. Just not me. I'm all about localism. An added reason why I so love the concept of direct democracy, but no, far too political, and they viewed seriously with suspicion every new member that I got in. And I came up with an idea, which was adopted by the Executive Council, because they tried everything they could to keep me off the ruling body of the local party, the Executive Council. But you see, here's a throwback really to just over 10 years before, when I was working Customs and Excise. I took the trouble to read the Establishment Code.
Yeah,
so I knew
about that.
Yes,
yeah.
And I read the Constitution of Hove Conservative Association. It wasn't much to read, but I read it over and over and over again, and I completely familiarised myself.
The thing is, you've got a photographic memory as
I
well,
do
haven't
have
you?
a photographic
So,
memory.
you know,
Huge
all of those
advantage.
things, once they're locked
Huge
away,
advantage.
they're in.
Oh, they're recorded, they're there.
Yeah.
And I found, oh, well, I'm blowed. If the CPC, all the constituent bodies of that association, the CWCC, Conservative Women's Constituency Committee, yes, why you would need a separate thing for women, but there you go. The CPC, the Constituency Political Committee, what were the other ones, and were various sort of subcommittee things, and they all had a right to elect a person or two people to the Executive Council. So I got myself on the Executive Council. Everything was thrown in my path, and they put up stooges. Very, very quickly it became apparent to me that this is absolutely as, how shall I put it, bent? Yes, bent, as the communists. The People's Party, in that, oh no, it was Buggins' turn, the pecking order. Certain favoured pigs, you know, have their snouts more in the trough.
So even at local level, before they get to national level, they're getting practice in this manipulation.
God, yeah. Top down. Why again? Direct democracy, bottom up. Now come on, what's not to understand about that? And it's the same wherever you go.
And you can see the machine you're fighting.
The machine.
The machine.
The machine. Well, I did dare to challenge the machine.
And how did that go?
Very well for me, but not particularly well for Hove Conservative Association, because I do remember, I'm jumping forward a little bit here, where up in central office, Norman Tebbit said...
So what happened there? How did you get to central office?
It didn't take long.
All right.
Because I got myself, as you know, almost immediately I joined the CPC. I was voted in. It was just in time for an AGM, and I was voted in as deputy chair. John Camp was off sailing his yacht and all the other things. He's an incredibly busy man, lovely.
Do you mean Goering's yacht?
Hermann Goering's yacht. Yes, Hermann Goering's yacht. Which, by the way, I learned how to sail on that yacht.
All right.
Yep, that's another matter. Keeping to the point, then as the deputy chair of the CPC, then of course there came up the elections for South East Area CPC. I was voted onto South East Area, and they met all over the South East, Kenton in Kent, and places up in Essex and Caterham in Surrey, and trying to think of the other areas. Hampshire, that was not South East area, but all around the, you know, the whole area. And I became the deputy chairman of the South East area, and from that, of course, straight into the central think tank, which was held at 32 St Square. That's the place always famous. Some would say infamous for Maggie Thatcher's 1983 landslide majority, a year after the termination of hostilities in the Falklands, where she and Norman Tebbit and Dennis were waving out the window. That's where she kept saying in that election campaign when they said, well, Miss Thatcher, the polls say you're going to get a landslide. No, please, we remain cautiously optimistic.
And you were in the central office at that time, throughout the Falklands period, and then after?
No, sadly not, because I actively got involved after the Grand Hotel bombing in 1984.
Right.
I wish I had have been, but I mean, put it this way, I've been a member since 1979. Did anybody ever get in touch with me? Oh no, they didn't like the cut of my jib. And I thought, after that happened, and right here, half a mile from me, I thought, excuse my French, everybody, you bastards, the IRA, that's it. I'm not taking no for an answer. I need to be involved. The rest is history.
So, after the bombing in Brighton, how did you end up in the CPC in the central office? How did you end up there in the CPC? Did they invite you, or I presume they invited
Nobody
you?
invited me. I had to kick the doors down every time. I was never invited. Oh no, invites came thick and fast once I was in central office.
Yes.
Now, that was. Then I thought, right, now I see exactly what you mean. You know, much too political for Hove, not too political for Mrs. Thatcher, Norman Tebbit, and all the rest up there. No, they couldn't get enough of me up there, and I would have gone a lot further if it hadn't have been for the fact that we hear about these men in grey suits. Oh, they exist. Faceless, anonymous, I can neither remember the face nor the name of the person who said what I'm about to say to me. All I can remember is that he was very, very minuscule. Fact, not rudeness. And he sidled up to me in central office one day, and when people suddenly start calling you sir, well, obviously, what's going on here? Good morning, sir, said he. I said, good morning. I didn't have a name for him already. He said, it surely must have become apparent to you that you're destined for greater things. I said, well, I had hoped so, but it wasn't necessarily apparent. A few words. They're currently looking for a by-election because you're needed in Westminster. You have a glittering future ahead of you. Now, I don't know if that's how they do their business. They send these, you hear a lot about the men in grey suits that tip you off on things and how to behave. I said, I said they can forget about a by-election unless it happens to be in Hove or one of the other constituencies in that kind of base. I said, I seek to represent nowhere but where I've lived all my life. I said, not for me, we didn't use the word parachuted then, to be dispatched somewhere I've never even set foot in. I said, we've already got that in Hove. Bad mistake, because of course we had Tim Sainsbury's there, people who lived in Newbury in Berkshire, but you know, that's the kind of place. It was, you know, the gift, like, you know, people being noble to the House of Lords. I have never had any time. That'll be the Irish in me. I've never had any time for that nonsense. But said he, you're a word in your shell right, sir. You're going to have to learn how to crawl. Well, that was the wrong thing to say to me. I said, I have never crawled to anyone in my life, and I'm not going to start now. You wouldn't believe how quick I was out of central office.
So how long had you been in the central office at that point?
2 years, I think.
2 years, and who did you work with?
Because that would be, I'm trying to think now, when would that be? That would have been after the 1980s. That would have been about 1980. actually no more than that. It would have been by about 1989.
Right, so you've
About
been in central
1989.
office a few years.
Oh yeah.
So you're going up and down from Brighton. Who are you working with in London at Smith Square?
Well, the entire cabinet, but it was how they operated was on one-to-one.
Right.
And of course, Colonel Jerry Exey, the Hove agent, who I always found this extraordinary because I would have thought he, would have been anathema. Oh my God, he's in central office. I thought, what's he doing here? Well, he was. No, I won't be rude. I'm not comment. He's not here to defend himself anymore. But he just managed to find. He'd been in the army paid corps in the past, and he managed to find positions for himself at every level in the party. Maybe that's what. Maybe Jerry, in actual fact, and I'm prepared to say this, because he sort of mellowed toward me when I was in central office, and he's also at the southeast area meetings as well as Smith Square. And he seemed to sort of mellow because he started being nice to me. Mind you, it could have been because he knew damn well, and I'm not going to be mealy-mouthed about it, I was on the way up.
Yeah.
Maybe he wished, perhaps I shouldn't have gone on so much, too political for Hope. I don't know, he's not here now, the poor man's passed away, so I'm not going to say bad things about people not here to defend themselves. And I remember the very first person that I met up there, and I didn't know I was going to be meeting Kenneth Baker, who at that time was, not Kenneth Baker, Kenneth Clark. Sorry, there were a lot of Kens. Kenneth Clark. Kenneth Clark was a complete Europhile.
Yeah, he
I
was.
could not stand Kenneth Clark on the telly. Here's the thing, when I met him, and I do remember, and yes, Ken, if you ever get to see this, because you're still alive, I'll tell you exactly what the Colonel warned me about you. He said you'll find him a lovely fellow, a very affable fellow. You'll get on. I said, with my views on Europe? This was some sort of a test, I think. Oh, no, aside from all that, oh boy, that sort of way they go on. Oh, no, he really is. He's a wag and a wit, said he. I said, right, okay. But, said he, grimacing, he does suffer from unfortunate disability. And I thought, well, what's he going to come out with now? I said, disability? I said, well, it isn't apparent. Well, it's his hand, you see. I said, what's wrong with his hand? Nothing, said he, except when it comes to his round, he seems to have great difficulty easing it into his pocket. If you hear it, Ken, you'll know what he means. And sure enough, it proved to be the case. I was taken, he got a car to take me down to, I can't remember what bar it was, my geography alone wasn't particularly good. It's very swanky place. And anyway, I've down there, I've done. Of course, Ken arrived, and I found it rather strange. Oh, hello, Nigel. Sorry if I've kept you. And I thought, well, I haven't met you. How do you know who I am? And that, I'm one of those people, alarm bells will ring. Well, how did you know? What is this place? Do you know what I mean? And anyway, I seem to have forgot my wallet. I thought, yes. I said, well, what's your poison? Oh, I'd love a pint of real ale, said he. I said, oh, I'm a real ale man. I soon saw why the Colonel said I'd get on with him. And then these were in the days prior to the smoking indoors ban. And then would you believe it? I forgot my cigarettes. I said, have one of mine. That was, we had several pints. We had a good many cigarettes, all of which were provided by yours truly, I might add. who was paying to get up there and for everything else.
These are the dues that are required to
Yes,
be paid. You
yes,
know, when
yeah.
you want to go
The
from
right,
serf
the
to
right
lord.
of passage.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, no wonder I was suspicious. How did you know who I was?
Yeah.
Hmm?
And so, who was running the central office? Who were the people you considered to be your bosses then?
Well, in the central office, in actual fact, I never got to meet the men in grey. Well, I did, but no names, no introductions. The men in grey suits. But the chairman of the party at the time was Norman Tebbit. And the guy who seemed to do most with the... what happened was, when we had these central office dues, it was the chairs and deputy chairs of each area of the country. So two, me and Michael Barrett, who was the leader of the opposition on Brighton Hove. Brighton Council, there wasn't one council there, and the other areas, and we all had to make presentations every time. We had to come up with policy ideas. And when it came to my idea, which went into law, as I'll come to in a moment, I couldn't do it because I made my living out of being a landlord. Among other things, I was a pub landlord, I was also a residential landlord. And so I had to get Councillor Stephen Foley, as was councillor in Whitward in Hove, to come up instead of the other deputy. I, of course, was there. Stephen Foley presented my plan. The plan was to not privatise as such, well, that wasn't my idea, but to enable people, so long as they had been a good few years in the council house, to buy a council house and to buy it at a reduced rate, and that would give them a foot onto the property owning democracy, which was what Mrs. T was so...
So you initiated the sale of council houses?
Well, that came from Hove CPC, and it was my proposal.
Right.
When we met in Holland Road, 65 Holland Road, when we had a really decent headquarters. Yes, that was my...
So then Mrs. Thatcher adopted it, and that was it, wasn't it?
Loved
it became
it.
a huge part
Absolutely
of her
loved it.
legacy, as it were.
But now, I'm sorry to say, a bad word about Mrs. T and the rest of them. Nobody ever told me, and they adopted that policy very quickly.
But they did, yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
Oh yes, right, that point. Another policy, I'll come to that in a moment, we'll stick on this point. Nobody ever told me that they had little, if any, intention of building new council houses.
So there'd be no replacement, no kind of carryover for the new people coming through the system?
Yes.
The new young unemployed... Well, no, the family members of the ones who bought the houses.
Oh, yes.
The young who were coming through the system. Yeah.
Something we should be encouraging, but hang on a minute. How do people get a deposit, etc.? Because wages were not brilliant in those days, Neil. And people have kids, they've got responsibilities. No, I wanted a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
That would ensure as many, obviously you could never get every single person, but as many as humanly possible, people in this country to own their own home. I'll tell you why, and it's quite straightforward. One, they'll take far more pride in something if they own it, and two, it will mean that money is freed up to build new houses to keep that conveyor belt going. Because I firmly believe there's still some of the old communists in me, you know, that a roof over one's head, no matter how humble, is a human right. It's not a gift, and I hated that attitude of the Tory wets. Nowadays people think the world owes them a living and a roof over their heads. Well, all very well for the silver spooners to say that. I'm a working person, and always was. I'm proud to be so. Yes, I've got an accent, and that's because my parents, who were also working people, wanted their children to have a better start in life than they had, Neil, and they skimped and scraped to put us through private education. and I will raise a glass to them for that, and I'm not going to. I get reverse snobbery. Oh,
Yeah.
you and your college boy accent. They had aspiration, and what is wrong with that? With aspiration?
Well, it drives everything in the end, doesn't it?
As I've come to learn.
So
In
long
my
as it's
communist
not just
days, I didn't think that.
As long as it's not unmoored from where you came from, isn't it? If it becomes unmoored from where you came from.
Oh yes.
And that's part of the issue, isn't it? Obviously, and those who've already got it then pulling the ladder up. And that's the problem. Oh, yeah, it's part of the problem.
Well, we come back again to this attitude of private fiefdoms. My wonderful Northern Irish granny was an extremely humble and a very poor lady. She had no education, but what a wise woman. She drummed into all of her 6 children. 2 phrases. One, I neither look up to nor do I look down on anybody. And the other one was, this is, always remember, this is the day, this is the tomorrow that you worried about yesterday. What's the use in worry? Work it out. And that's gone right the way down the generations in my family. Good homespun wisdom. This was a lady whose husband had got shell shock, we now call it PTSD. He was a prisoner of the Turks. He got away from the Turks. He swam across the Dardanelles and got a string of medals for it.
Wow.
But ended up murdered in 1954. The political situation in Northern Ireland.
Oh dear.
I'm not going to, not for me to go into that, but these are things. He was a war hero, a decorated war hero. Both my granddads were decorated war heroes. I never knew either, because both were murdered.
Oh dear.
One by the son of a politician, which could never be proved, but we know, everybody knows, in Northern Ireland. The other by the Germans, because my grandfather was not only in the Royal Army Medical Corps and in charge of the Glenart Castle as they called it, a ship, a small line that had been requisitioned to bring back the wounded, and I might add, plenty of wounded Germans were brought back to England to be treated. There was no fear or favour in the Royal Army Medical Corps. And something I would like to add, they've built a new headquarters for the RAMC in Birmingham, and they've named it the Glenart Castle. Isn't that a lovely honour? That's how much he was thought of. He was also a British agent, and the Germans got to hear. I'm not going to go into details of that for obvious reasons. And they put a target on his head. Get Captain Furness, and get Captain Furness they did. Two U-boats. U-boats were only in their infancy then, toward the end of the First World War, sailed up the Bristol Channel, and just off Hartland Point, I was down there in February 2018 with my sister to unveil the memorial stone. What a hike that was on a walking stick up a steep cliff top. And that is a memorial to Captain Furness, James Collins Furness, and also to, I can't remember how many it was, nursing staff and wounded who were killed in that atrocity. Some managed to escape and were landed. The ship had taken off from Newport in South Wales, and the bodies were landed at Swansea. Every tale I've heard says that Captain Furness could have been saved, but I mean, the chivalry, no. It was a tradition to go down with the ship, and he was last seen standing to attention on the bridge of that ship, and the two torpedoes that hit the engine room on either side went down 3.5 minutes flat.
Tragic.
Dead of night, yep.
Well, you must be very proud of that.
Incredibly proud. Incredibly proud. of both grandfathers, incredibly proud. I lost a great uncle I never knew, Northern Irish side, Granny's youngest brother. He's commemorated, as his granddad, on a memorial at Gallipoli. Yeah. So, there you are.
That's your history from these
That's
these
my
islands.
history, and it's a bizarre history. It's a
Yeah,
very
because
bizarre
it's a mixture because of your Northern Irish Catholic, Protestant heritage.
yeah.
Yes.
The family is mixed, it's completely mixed. And Granddad's family were aristocrats. Aristocrats that came down, the first Furness that came to this country was the favourite cousin. We've only discovered this in later years. The favourite first cousin of William the Conqueror. I'm afraid I'm not proud of that ancestry because I don't like the Normans.
That sounds like a reversal of history, doesn't it, almost?
Well, isn't it funny, isn't it strange how things end up? And he was given the county of Oxfordshire, the richest county in England. So that's that side of the family.
And you became a communist.
And I became, wouldn't you just guess?
Lord and Master from the Norman yoke. So back to the Norman yoke and Norman Tebbit.
Norman Tebbit.
So what did you make of Norman?
Absolutely adored the man. I think I mentioned earlier on about my then girlfriend, and we saw Norman Tebbit at the Tory party conference, and just wow, that just completely, utterly sold it to us, you know. Never heard anything like it. Mrs. Thatcher, fantastic, but Norman Tebbit, you know, a spitting image, portrayed him as with a knuckle duster. The thug of the piece was, Norman was no thug, very far from it, but Norman was very straight talking, and that was exactly what this country needed. And that time, that was later on. We were more involved, the two of us, by that time, when Norman said about, you know, my father didn't sit around complaining. No, he got on his bike and he didn't get off it until he found gainful employment for his wife and children. To support them, you know.
And Parkinson, you knew Parkinson as well?
Oh, I liked Cecil. Cecil was lovely, and his wife, and they were lovely. And Ian Gow, I became very friendly with him. And what happened? The Irish National Liberation Army blew up Ian Gow in 1990. I could not believe it. Hankham, just north of Eastbourne. I've been over their house many times, and I simply couldn't believe it when I heard it was assassinated. You know, and you know, I'll tell you something too. My mother always said Airy Neve. Well, of course I didn't know Airy Neve because Inler also assassinated Airy Neve. The Provisional IRA get the blame for everything, but we have to remember it's almost like the Middle Eastern situation currently. There are all manner of different players on both sides of the argument. You can't just point an accusing finger and, you know, target them, carpet them all, paint them all as the one. And Airy Neve was blown up as he was driving his car out the underground car park of the House of Commons.
You had a tilt switch, didn't
That's
they?
it. That's it. And he was blown to bits. And I remember my mother, because I was over there doing the garden, which I'd always done. And when Ma came running down the garden, twice that happened, then and with Ian Gow, Ma running down the garden, oh Nigel, I don't know how to tell you, she said, they've blown up Airy Neve. And she said she was in tears, floods of tears. The stupid idiot, said she, because he was going to get rid of internment without trial because he was, you know, and I didn't even know that part of it. My mum was very big on history, and that would have been the first thing he was going to do, stop internment without trial, which they should never have introduced in the first place. So,
now,
quite a history, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And when you look at...
Well, what a privilege to have known Sanctuary. I didn't know Airy Neve, but...
No. But when you look at those internal issues, and then you look at what happened to you within the Conservative Party and these internal ruptures. So how did it all end up with them, and where did you go? Within the Conservative Party, because you.
No, I still remained. I remained in the Conservative Party. I wasn't leaving the Conservative Party, but I thought, no, if you expect me, any of you, Maggie or Norman or anybody, to crawl, you've got another thing coming. No way. Of course, Hove were horrified. They hadn't wanted me back. I was told I was as popular as a pork chop in a synagogue.
So you were kind of moved out of central office. That was that.
No, no, it's me that did the move. But no, I said I'm out of here. I'm not listening to that.
Right.
I still don't know who it was that said that to me. Faceless Anonymous, the men in grey suits. So what happened was, I subsequently was approached by Brighton Conservatives. Well, if they don't want you in Hove, we need you in Brighton, because Labour had already taken over, but by a whisker, in 1986. Now in Brighton, what happened was, they had a third of the council elected each year, and on the fourth year it was reserved for county council elections, because it wasn't a unitary authority, you see. So every year, and I favour that system. And why do I favour it? Being a direct democracy supporter, I'd favoured it long before I'd even heard of direct democracy. It keeps them refreshed. So you're ever on alert.
And you don't
get too complacent and think you can get away with blue murder, you know, in the next 4 years, because you can't. And I was headhunted, promptly headhunted by St Peter's Ward, then became chairman of St Peter's Ward, all in very quick order. Then I was poached by Hollingbury Ward and asked would I stand in 1990. And so it was me against David Lepper. Now David Lepper had subsequently, 7 years later, David Lepper, whom I'd known since my days in the Brighton Rents Project, a very left-wing organisation, way back in 1969. He and his wife were both councillors. His wife, Jean, were both councillors on Brighton Council, and pretty left-wing, militant they were too. Nice people, nice couple, I always got on with them. And so I was standing against Dave Lepper. You couldn't make it up, too, that used to be in that same Bolshe radical organisation.
Nice revolutionaries.
Not in that election campaign, it was pretty full on. Well, that was sadly the only time I stood in Brighton. And a riot ensued. Yes.
Nothing to do with you, though, Nigel.
Well, many in the Conservatives said it was entirely down to my irresponsibility. The only mistake I made, now, let me just say this, myself and Michael Barrett, that used to also be up in central office with me, myself and Michael Barrett, who the Tory leader of the opposition, the young man, younger than me, we were the only two who dared to speak, and there used to be a tradition, there'd been a tradition, time immemorial, that election results were announced at the Dome. And certainly in my teenage days, certainly in my communist days, which was late teens and through half my 20s, oh, the place to be on election night. Oh, it was like last night at the Proms, that Brighton Dome, and they had no health and safety restrictions on numbers, you know, all the fancy curved seats, but then people, there was a huge mob, they were all waiting for the luckless participants to come out from behind the great drapes and to to have abuse hurled at them and rotten fruit and just a different world. Yes, I'll say it openly, it was huge fun. It was great fun. so long as you weren't on the receiving end, which I never thought I would be. I couldn't have ever pictured myself being stood there and instead everything else of me, but well, that's exactly what happened. Cut your long story short. Nobody would tell me, nobody in the Conservatives, at the count was in the Corn Exchange, which adjoins the pavilion, there's linking doors, the pavilion, the dome, and then the dome is where the announcements were made. And all the TV cameras and all the rest of it were in the dome, they weren't allowed to be in at the count. And I said, right, I'm going to speak. I didn't know at the time, the joint, it was a dreadful night for the Tories, dreadful, abysmal. And and Michael, interesting, the two of us who'd been up in central office were the only two, as the local journalist Adam Premium noted, only two who got, the only two Tories who dared to go. He began by saying election nights at the Dome are invariably not a pretty affair. How refreshing, therefore, and he was an openly liberal, Lib Dem person, had no time for Tories. How refreshing, therefore, said Adam, to see two lone Tories, in this order, Nigel Furness and Michael Barrett, brave the baying, howling mob of lefties. And interestingly, said he, I've done the figures, said he, and both of those men received the joint least swing to Labour.
Right.
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is indicative of something.
Oh yes, but nobody would show me, nobody's prepared. No, you're not going out there, you're not going on that. I said, and why on earth wouldn't I go on? You see, in those days, all the candidates who'd spoken were entitled to go and say whatever they wanted, not least to say thank you to all my supporters and blah, blah, the usual rigmarole, and to give a message of hope. I'll be back next time or whatever.
But not after your speech.
Unfortunately not, so I'd better cut to the chase there. My little agent, little guy, Len, very, very small man, and anyway, he said, sod off you lot, he said, this, because he was the one who'd headhunted me, he's going to speak, what other reason we got him here for? None of you lot are prepared to speak, so anyway, well, you have to find your own way, said Pat Smith, the late Pat Smith, a lady, who was the election agent. And it was just such an absolute rabbit warren of tunnels and wires hanging down and all dark. And where the hell are we? And we were going round and round and round. We could hear some noise, somebody speaking somewhere. It seemed really far away. Let's go that way, said Len. We went along. Well, it's coming from up there. And there was like a platform about 3 feet, I suppose. I wasn't in the physical state I'm in these days. I was pretty fit. And I jumped up onto the thing, and just a hand, said Len. I pulled Len up. Give him that, said he. I said, I fully intend to. And anyway, I thought, what are these things? Little realising they were the really heavy velvet drapes, really thick, at the back of the stage. And fumbling around, and all of a sudden, they parted, and Dave Lepper, who was in full flow, having won, turned, saw me, and fled. Yes, fled. Yes. Exit stage.
Your reputation preceded you.
Well, I'm afraid it did. Exit stage right. And I went forward, thought, oh, this is good. 8 microphones. Well, the Dome is a big bill. It's where they staged the Eurovision Song Contest when ABBA won.
ABBA.
Very same building, very same stage. I never thought I'd be stood
You
up
met your
there.
Waterloo that night.
I didn't meet my Waterloo, they met their Waterloo. Actually, I should have thought of that, well done. But anyway, and then they'll, deafening chorus, boo, hiss, and things I'm not prepared to repeat on here, you can imagine. Maggie was at the height of her unpopularity because the poll tax, it wasn't a poll tax, it was a community charge, another matter for another day, as I enlightened them. And yes, I
that
was.
went down well.
Well, I suppose I did provoke them, but look, all the abuse that was being hurled at me. And I thought, well, let's begin. And I tapped on these, all this battery. Tap, testing. My God, I couldn't believe. My voice was a lot stronger in those days anyway. And it just echoed around the dome. I said, right, let's get one thing straight. I will talk and you will listen. See, Kyle. I very stupidly, and yes, I shouldn't have done it, but I said, oh, recognition at last? Well, that did it. That was irresponsible. I hold my hands up to it. But, you actually have to be there on the receiving end, vile.
Yeah.
Absolutely vile. And I said, now I will talk and you will listen. And guess what? And then I really bellowed, I think you'll find I can shout much louder than you. Well, everything under the sun. Not a single thing connected with me.
And ever since, no losing candidate has been allowed to speak.
No candidate has been. They've never. I'm really sorry to say this. That was all my fault in that respect. That no one has ever been allowed to speak there again.
So they forgot about you.
No. They weren't. Well, the dome was wrecked. They exhausted their supply. I mean, there was even a watermelon aiming straight for me, and guess what? I didn't even duck, and it missed. And I did provoke. I said, well, you're not very good shots, are you? Try that profile. Try this profile. They said, let's get one thing straight.
Is that what Trump was doing?
Huh?
Is that what Trump was doing?
What?
Trying different profiles.
Oh. No, but that was what I said, and I think it's on film. Actually, it is, because it was on telly. But anyway, I said, let's get this straight, if nothing else. I'm not afraid of you lot. Not a single missile connected. Then they started ripping this. Yes, ripping, hurling. God, did some straight. Those theatre seats, those.
Really?
Yeah.
No velvet ones.
But stripping them out and hurling these on the. Next thing, I got a sharp tap on my. God, I thought one of them's got on the platform. Well round, defensive mode. And I could see by the pips, it's the chief inspector. A word in your ear, sir, said he sternly. I said, you'll have to come a little closer, I can't quite hear you. And of course, what he was whispering bellowed out and echoed out around the dome. If it's your intention to provoke a riot, I must call you. I said, Chief Inspector, it's my intention to exercise my right to free speech. I said, and furthermore, I intend to continue. Be gone with you, and he did. I'm still defiant.
Well, so what happened after that? There have been no more political
They
events?
they will not hold elections in the dome, because it's a listed traitor, but the damage they did was unbelievable.
Really, yeah?
Oh.
Well, a historic night for Brighton.
So, what's happening in Brighton these days, lest you get the idea into your heads, anybody, that it's something new. No, it's not. No. We have a reputation for this sort of thing, and let me tell you something else. You've got to be tough to stand here, but guess what? They're cowards. I've never had a blow landed on me, not a single thing. I don't know why so many people are so afraid to stand up and exercise their right. Well, I'm living proof, and I hope that's not famous last words. I'm living proof that they're all mouth and trousers.
They have often been the case.
Yeah.
However, we'll end it on that note for now, Nigel. We'll come back again because there's more.
On a positive note, when the dome's just been destroyed.
Yes. Well, an interesting one. So we'll end there on that point.
Yeah.
But we'll come back again because there's more to talk about, particularly with when you split from the Hove Conservatives yourself,
yes.
And then we'll see what colours are revealed then.
Colours will be revealed.
All right, Nigel, thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. It's always great pleasure.
Thank you.